Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here, and today we're talking about episode 6 of WandaVision. Okay, so there are heavy spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, what are you doing watching this? Go and watch it on Disney Plus and then come right back here. Okay, so I felt so validated by this episode. You know, last week I had a meltdown because of the Pietro recast. I was freaking out thinking, oh my god, they're like getting rid of Aaron Taylor-Johnson's Pietro. He's going to be completely erased. We're having a new Pietro, he's forgotten. And then in the intro to this episode, in the sort of previously trailer, they showed me Pietro dying, which really hurt, by the way, thanks a lot. And they actually showed Aaron Taylor-Johnson. I was a little bit worried last episode when they showed the footage of Wanda at the protest in Sokovia and they cut Pietro's face out, and Dan was saying to me, like, what if that's because Aaron Taylor-Johnson hasn't consented to be in it and they can't show his image or something? So what a relief to actually see his face in that opening. Okay, so they've done exactly what I wanted them to do, I think, if I'm right about this, with this new Pietro. So I would say I'm 99% sure at this point that what we have right now is not Pietro. We are looking at Mephisto in the guise of Pietro. Now, I don't know why he's taken the form he has instead of Aaron Taylor-Johnson's form. It could be that seeing his face, as the Pietro actually tells us in the episode, if you're in paradise, if you're in Shangri-La, like, maybe you don't want to be reminded of tragedy. Is it more than that? Is it that their histories together, Wanda and Pietro, the real Pietro, are so tied to struggle and grief and to the Avengers and the experiments on them by Hydra and their powers, that Mephisto might not want her to remember that aspect of herself and not think of herself as a hero? It's interesting that this episode, Vision is informed that he's an Avenger and he doesn't know what that is. And again, is that Wanda that's erased that information from his mind? Or is it someone else? Is it Mephisto? Is he trying to not let these characters remember that they're superheroes and they can actually fight back? I just think that's kind of interesting because, for example, Wanda is actually trying to clarify her memories with Pietro in this episode, and there's definitely an element of uneasiness here. Like, this is not just a straight recast. This is not Wanda reacting to Pietro as if it's her normal brother, he's just somehow changed his face. There were so many moments this episode where it was made really obvious that Wanda is a little bit uncomfortable. She's questioning whether this actually is her brother. I mean, she tests him during the episode. But Pietro actually brings up a memory of a Halloween in the past when the twins were younger, and Wanda looks kind of startled and says, that's not how I remember that going. So the theory that Wanda created this Pietro is totally off the table, I think, because even if she was bringing back her brother and she couldn't bring back Aaron Taylor-Johnson's face, she would have created him with the memories of the old Pietro so that they could have that bond and that relationship. Wanda's uneasy here. This is not something that's her doing, because if it was, she'd probably fix it. Right, so the reason that I'm absolutely almost 100% convinced that this Pietro is Mephisto in disguise is mostly to do with Billy. So this episode we saw the twins starting to get their powers, and from the very beginning of this episode, Billy is a little bit uncertain of Uncle Pietro. So there's the line from Speed, from Tommy, when he kind of mocks Billy and he says, are you scared? And Billy says, he's our uncle, why would I be scared? Tommy then says, because it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you're secretly afraid he's a vampire. Billy pretends he's not scared, he's trying to be brave, he says he's not scared, and then suddenly up Pietro pops and he starts pretending to actually be a vampire. But this unease from Billy, especially because they establish in this episode that something within Billy's powers alerts him to stuff that isn't quite right, because he tunes into his dad when Vision is in trouble, so his senses are quite attuned, like almost like Spidey senses really, which he doesn't have in the comics, I don't think. He can sense when Teddy is in trouble, but that's because they've got a connection and I believe it's to do with a spell. I don't think he instinctively just knows when Teddy's in trouble, but that's something he seems to have in this show, because obviously he knows when Vision is hurt and gets very distressed about that. So we're being told that Billy has these kind of perceptions he might not understand. Why is he afraid of Uncle Pietro? Like, it just doesn't make sense, because even if this is a multiverse Quicksilver, if this is Peter from the X-Men universe, why would Billy be afraid of him? You know, he wouldn't be afraid of him. There's no reason to, because he's never met the guy before. It's not that he's seeing him and he's thinking, this isn't my uncle, because Billy doesn't know Pietro. Why is he afraid? And also the line about, you think he's a vampire, he's sleeping till 4 a.m. I mean, I'm thinking that this is Mephisto, like, that wanted the children to be created, you know, the whole for the children thing before, and then Wanda got pregnant, and he is basically feasting on the souls of these kids, specifically Billy and his powers, and he's draining them of their powers. It would just make sense because, I mean, just in terms of the directing, there is something very unsettling in the shot where Pietro is asleep on the sofa, and he opens his eyes and the twins don't realise. There's lots of kind of jump scares, like when Wanda turns around at the door and he's doing like a scary face. You know, it's all kind of there. His hair is pointed up like comics Pietro, but to the extreme. You know, it looks like devil horns. He's got the devil horns. Something Dan alerted me to is last episode when he turned up, the actual stained glass in the door changes to red when he pops into the screen. We have the advert, which was my favourite advert of the series so far, where we have the Yo Magic yogurt, and we have a little boy who's dressed in red and blue, so probably Billy, and he is alone and he's scared, and then we have this shark, this cool dude shark, that pops out of the water with sunglasses on, which I'm sure has Evan Peters' voice, and he gives him the Yo Magic product to supposedly help him, but it ends up draining Billy of his powers and he eventually dies. Also, this shark is so supposed to be Pietro because he calls the child in that advert little dude, and then later we have Pietro calling Tommy little dude, so for me there's no doubt. That's the vampire comment. That is why Billy is unsettled around Uncle Pietro. Also, did you notice that Uncle Pietro spent a lot of time around the kids? He wants to spend time with the kids. He's kind of described as like a sort of man-child, and you see that most of his interactions are weirdly not with Wanda, it is with the children. He spends so much time with them. When Vision doesn't want to go out on the Halloween trick-or-treating, he says, I'll do it, I'll be the father figure, which is interesting, because if he is Mephisto and they're parts of his soul, I mean, are they kind of like his kids as well? When they go trick-or-treating, he literally yells to the kids, unleash hell, demon spawn. I mean, I am sure that he is Mephisto, and Mephisto has taken on that form. Because if we think that Mephisto's been in each episode, he's been an animal or something, there was no animal this episode. Who is the extra person, or the extra thing, that's come to live in their house as the cameo? It's Pietro. And of course, if this was Wanda's doing, she would have brought him back as her real brother with real memories. There wouldn't be this awkward disconnect situation, so this can't be Wanda's doing. I mean, to me, they're definitely working up to the reveal, because when Monica, Jimmy and Darcy, well, when Monica sees his face for the first time and she asks who that is, Darcy says, oh, well, Jimmy says it's Wanda's brother come to town, and Darcy says, and he brought the wrong face. Like, they are really making a big deal of this being wrong, you know? This is why I feel comfortable, because even if Aaron Taylor Johnson's not going to be in it as Pietro, he's not being replaced as Pietro, and that was my nightmare, that they were going to bring in this new Pietro and he was going to be like the X-Men version and we'd forget Arbon. But that's not what they're doing. I feel so relieved by that. Like, this is an in-universe thing, that something is very wrong here. He's wrong. And I also feel really validated by the characterisation of this Pietro, because a load of people online have been saying, oh, but really, Evan Peters' Pietro is much closer to the comics. And I don't understand that point of view. Like, in terms of powers, yeah, okay, he's able to, like, run as fast as Pietro in the comics, and he does more of that stuff. We've had more of him. But personality-wise, he isn't Pietro, and I feel like this episode, like, validated me and actually used that as a plot point. Because our Pietro that we know is very close to Wanda. You get the impression that because they've grown up alone together, there's almost a sort of codependency. He's got more of a darkness to him, he's more angsty, he's cooler, he's kind of more grown up. He had to grow up a lot younger. There are huge differences. So it's like they're kind of hitting us on the head with these differences between the Pietros, and Wanda's realising that too. I think Wanda is unsettled by it because this isn't how her Pietro would react. I mean, this version of Pietro, if he is Mephisto, I mean, he is doing that thing I thought he would, more subtly than I thought, but he is sort of coming between Vision and Wanda and becoming that person that Wanda trusts even when she can't talk to Vision. So the scene when they're sitting together and he says, look, I'm not your husband, I'm here for you, you can tell me what's going on. And it felt almost like Mephisto trying to figure out, like, how much does Wanda know? Like, how much has she figured out here? What's the situation? And when Vision's in trouble and Billy's freaking out, I know that Pietro and Vision have beef, but he's not concerned. He wants to stop that. Wanda actually has to blast him because he makes a joke out of it and he's trying to distract from the problem. It's like he doesn't want Wanda to think about that outside world. And also when Wanda sits with him and they discuss the situation in the world she's in, for some reason Pietro already knows the situation and he's in her confidence, you know, he's able to discuss this with her, but he also tells her that he's impressed and that he's proud of her, and that is how Mephisto would do it, because if you've got Vision telling Wanda this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing this, the only real way you're going to get Wanda to do as you want her to is to bring in her brother, who she listens to and she admires. This character is encouraging Wanda to keep up this whole pretense, and he's not created by Wanda because he's asking questions that Wanda might find uncomfortable. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he's Mephisto. I loved how they were able to use those kind of tropes of the kind of annoying brother-in-law situation, with Vision being sort of disapproving and him causing trouble with the kids. I love how they were able to work that into the whole sitcom style. I mean, there's the quote that Pietro actually says in this episode. He says, "I'm just trying to do my part, okay? Come to town unexpectedly, create tension with the brother-in-law, stir up trouble with the Rugrats, and ultimately give you grief." I mean, that's what you wanted, isn't it? I mean, it does feel quite manipulative, and yeah, maybe it would make sense in this universe if we didn't know that everyone else in this universe is struggling to understand these things. Why does this one character in the universe, why does he understand exactly what's going on? Why is he able to ask Wanda about it? I mean, in terms of the advert with the Yo Magic yogurt, I mean, this might be nothing, but we have in the episode, we have him sitting with the twins and getting them to drink sodas really fast until they burp. I mean, is he feeding them something that will increase their powers? Because later in that episode, the powers manifest, don't they? An interesting detail I really liked was the cinema was playing The Incredibles and The Parent Trap. So obviously The Incredibles is potentially like pushing the kids to develop their powers. I love that, because when I watched The Incredibles, I thought, wow, that's so Pietro and Wanda with like Violet and Dash and their powers. Like, it's very Billy and Tommy. And so it is subtly like, it's pushing those kids to get their powers. And then The Parent Trap is the whole idea of, I wasn't sure about that one. I mean, it's about twins. I mean, I suppose it must be about finding and reconnecting with a long-lost twin, but I'm not so sure about that one. Also, Agnes, she is in the intro in their house, weirdly, with the rest of the family, and she's with Billy quite a lot, we see. And I don't know, I think it's a misdirect. I think for a while we've wondered if she's actually in league with Mephisto and she's bad. I'm actually more inclined to think now that she's trying to protect Billy somehow or help him. I wonder if she did go in as Agatha Harkness as a witch to try and help, and although she can't remember who she is, her instinct is to try and help the family somehow. Also, the beginning where Pietro shows up and it says Pietro Maximoff as himself, that is suspicious. That is so dodgy, because none of the other characters have as himself. I mean, that should be a given. Like, all sorts of alarm bells are ringing at this point. So I am really happy with the way this Pietro stuff is playing out, because I just feel like Aaron Taylor-Johnson was right for the Marvel Universe as Pietro. His mannerisms were right. I know loads of people are big fans of Evan Peters as Pietro, and the character we had today was very similar to his character in the X-Men films, but, you know, grown up a bit. I mean, they actually say in the episode, don't they, he speaks to Wanda about like the ethical considerations of what she's done, and he says that she keeps the personalities kind of close to their real personalities. Which again is kind of another clue about Pietro, by the way, because why would Pietro have such a different personality? And a load of people as well, just to rant a little bit, but loads of people online saying, oh yeah, but Evan Peters' version is a better Pietro, he's just Americanized. Once you Americanize Pietro, that's no longer Pietro. Like, his whole backstory, I mean, I've spoken about how it's so important that he's a twin, that he is the twin that feels like he has to be more protective and that he has to be there for Wanda. But also, it's his heritage, it's him being Eastern European, it's that feeling of difference that those two characters have. Their whole thing in the comics and in the MCU is that they feel like outsiders, they don't know where they fit, they only have each other. If you Americanise Pietro, that's not Pietro. I've said it before, it's Speed. So something I did like is that obviously Tommy's going to grow up and become kind of like this Pietro, which kind of explains why in the comics Tommy ends up like that, you know, because I've often thought in the X-Men films, love Evan Peters' character, but it's Speed in the 80s, it's Tommy in the 80s. My absolute ideal would be that the multiverse opens and somehow or Wanda manages to resurrect him, but somehow we have the real Pietro coming through and saving his sister and his nephews and even Vision, you know, and giving us that. I mean, they showed us him in the preview trailer, you know. We know this Pietro is wrong. It would be so satisfying and perfect for Pietro to show up and be like, who the hell is this guy? You really believe that this was me? Because this Pietro, I will say it again, he is not Pietro Maximoff. He doesn't act in any way. Even an Americanized version of Pietro Maximoff, he's a man-child. He's a little bit too... he's too playful. He's too sitcom. He's too light, you know? He doesn't have the trauma and angst that our Pietro has. They're such different characters. And again, I loved how almost manipulative it was, but also sad and made me really upset when Wanda's questioning why he's there, and he says, well, I was shot in the street and then I heard your voice and I knew that you needed me. And it kind of shuts Wanda up, because of course she wants to believe that. You would, wouldn't you? If you lost your brother, you would desperately want to believe, even if alarm bells are going off, no, he's here, I've got him back, I can make this work. You'd want to believe it. So Monica, Jimmy and Darcy, I love them so much. They give off vibes of the sort of people, or the sort of kids at school where if you were getting bullied, they would be the ones that would stand up for you. They're all now companion material, especially Darcy. I loved when Vision was trying to get out of the town, or the boundaries of the town, and you've got Darcy, who's no longer afraid for herself. She's just yelling, you have to help him, like, he's hurt, we have to help him, why won't you help him? That was so companion-like. I love how they've bonded those three characters together. I don't know how they even figured out that those characters would work, but they're perfect. Monica, again, is a total hero. Haywood is nasty. We knew Haywood was nasty, but wow. I love that Monica's personality trait is that she will stand up to anyone. Like, she doesn't care, this is her boss, and yet she says do not use the last 5 years to allow yourself to be a coward. Like, that's not an excuse. Again, they mentioned her connections to Carol and told her she was told off by Haywood for, you know, advocating for superpowered people, which is interesting because it looks like Monica is already on her way to being superpowered. We were right about last episode. It is the boundaries of Wanda's world and going in and out of it that seems to be changing her DNA. So I would say that Photon is imminent if she takes on the name Photon. In the comics at the moment, I believe she uses the name Spectrum, but because earlier they showed her mum and it said Maria Photon Rambo, I wonder if they'll go with Photon. But she is going in there to save Wanda. And just like the compassion of those three characters, I really love them. I'm so impressed that this show with, I mean, the episodes are quite short, but the character work that they do is so good, especially the people outside of Wanda's world. We don't get that much time with them, but we really care about those three. So we find out that this whole time Haywood has been able to see into the boundary. So he's been able to track Vision. Why is he tracking Vision? Presumably because he was one of the people that was in charge of taking him apart before. On the screen it actually says something about an asset, so it's like he's tracking something that he believes is his. So I'm presuming that when Wanda stole Vision's body, it was Haywood who was in charge of that whole operation, and Wanda rescued Vision and he wants Vision back. There have been rumours for a while that Ultron is going to factor into this, and a lot of people have speculated that this whole business with taking Vision apart is because people want to take the elements of Ultron out of him and rebuild Ultron, which could be interesting. So I don't know how accurate this is, but there was a rumour a long time ago that the guy who does the voice of Ultron was going to be doing the voice for WandaVision. There were also rumours that Aaron Taylor-Johnson was going to be in it as well, so I still have hope. But if those things are true and they're not just, you know, speculation and they're not wrong, then we could be maybe about to find out that Haywood is trying to rebuild Ultron somehow, and that's why he needs Vision. We still don't know what they were doing with Vision when they took him apart, and I'm sure it must be to do with Ultron. And you know what? Any excuse for them to be able to redo Ultron, because two things in Age of Ultron were so bad. In fact, there were quite a few things. Like, I have such a love-hate relationship with that film because it gave me Vision, it gave me my Maximoffs, but also some things just weren't right for me. The whole fear involved in Ultron, and it's the same thing that I think with the Cybermen in Doctor Who, is that they are robotic and you can't sort of reason with them, and that's what makes Ultron different from Vision, for example, because Vision is like a human and he has emotions, he wants to be a human. So I feel like having Ultron be like sassy and giving him human mannerisms just took away from what he is and how scary he is. So this could be an opportunity for them to bring Ultron back, but this time, like, take out that emotion, take out those kind of Tony Starkisms and make him the character from the comics. So we had another scary surprise this episode where we saw Pietro dead with bullet holes in him, you know. This show loves to scare me. And I almost wonder again if we're thinking Pietro is Mephisto at this point. Is that like a manipulation tactic? Did Wanda forget, or was that Mephisto, like, frightening her? Because if it was the real body that she was seeing, she would be seeing Aaron Taylor-Johnson, right? Is that Mephisto scaring her, as if to be like, look, don't question things, because if you question things, you're going to see things you don't like and it's going to be scary and you won't be able to cope with it. It's like sort of manipulating her, isn't it? She won't want to see those things, so she's going to stop thinking so deeply about things. I'm sure Billy is the key to this. With Billy's powers and him becoming more aware, his fear of Uncle Pietro, I think Billy's going to crack this and he's going to realise there's something very wrong. This is not his uncle. Also, there have been rumours about... So Monica said she I believe it was like some sort of aeronautical engineer or something, or a space engineer. She wanted to help her get back into Wanda's universe, and she mentioned that last episode, and there's been speculation that that person might be Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. We know that the Fantastic Four are probably coming into the MCU. They are a huge part in the comics. I mean, the most recent big comic, Empire, was actually focused on Billy's husband, Teddy Altman, so that's Hulkling, and the Fantastic Four were a huge part of that as well. So we could be looking at getting Reed Richards in. I mean, we just don't know from this point. I feel like there was a leak a while ago of Evan Peters as Pietro, which I never saw. Dan saw it and he said, do I want to know? And I said, look, I don't want to know. So yeah, I didn't see it, but I know it was there. But there haven't been any further leaks, I don't think. We really don't know what's going on, because especially when they described it, I think it was Paul Bettany who said that the structure of this show, the first 3 is the mystery, the next 3 are kind of giving you some answers, and then suddenly the last 3 like really get intense, you know, like it ramps up, so it becomes more like an MCU film. I don't know what to expect at all. I'm praying for Aaron Taylor-Johnson as Pietro. I want Wanda to get her brother and her twin back. Please bring him back. I would love to see the twins age up to their Young Avengers selves, although I love these little actors. I mean, I recognise some of the dialogue from today's episode because a while ago there was a leak from 2 brothers who were auditioning for parts called, I think one of them was Timmy, I don't know what the other one was, and they were auditioning for twins. And we would never have known that was to do with WandaVision, but I think because the actors themselves were brothers, people put it together and thought, wait, are they auditioning for the new Marvel show? So I'd heard the lines about, you know, like the vampire and all that kind of thing. The characterisation is so good. They're absolutely ready to grow into their Young Avengers counterparts at this point. Billy is he's sweeter, he's more of a nerd, he's a bit clumsy, he fell off his dance mat, and Tommy thinks he's the most awesome person ever, and he's arrogant, but he also does love Billy deep down. So I would love to see them aged up. I would love to see them with Pietro, the real Pietro. I would like to see Mephisto unmasked. I would like to see Monica Rambeau as Photon or as Spectrum. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else. But I'm so excited. I wait all week for this, and yeah. I don't know what to say. It's a great, great show. Okay, I love you loads and I'll see you really soon. I've actually been working on a track recently inspired by WandaVision. If you don't know, I make music also. Yes, I do. So I'll probably put that up quite soon and you can tell me what you think of that. So yeah, it's completely WandaVision inspired. It's with my friend Tudor Acid, who I've collaborated with before on music. So yeah, love you loads. See you really soon. Okay, bye.